Hi there. You're listening to and watching Taking It Black with your host. I'm Valerie Hicks Hale, attorney Valerie Hicks Hale to be exact. And we've got a great program for you today. I want to share some information with you about Black Wall Street. If you've not heard about Black Wall Street, um, it's a story that racist whites have out of Oklahoma have tried for years to bury. But, we understand that truth crushed to earth will rise again. And that's the case here with Black Wall Street of Tulsa, Oklahoma. This Monday, Memorial Day, May 31st, is the 100th anniversary of the start of the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre. And what the reason I say start, because it took place over a 2-day period. It started on the 31st and went all the way through the 1st of June. On that day, white mobs attacked the prosperous community in Tulsa, Oklahoma called Greenwood. It was known as Black Wall Street because it was a very prosperous area. And I'll get into a little bit more detail about what the type of community it was, what type of businesses, what type of wealth it had. But let's go. I digress, and I apologize for that. In 1921, Oklahoma was a territory. It wasn't a state. Tulsa was a, I guess, a community in the territory of Oklahoma. Oklahoma wasn't a state. So at that point, it was really considered a free area. It was a territory. It wasn't a state where states had to be considered either slave states or free states. It was considered free. There was a land rush, and around that time, and really a little bit before 1920s. It was really started at the turn of the century, around 1900. There was this land rush, and people started running to the west to get property, expand, to live their lives out in the, as they said, the wild, wild west. And Black people were no different. Black people took a part in that. There was a move at the time. There were Black people who would move at that time to Oklahoma to make it their home, more of a state, a Black state for African Americans. They moved there. They interacted with Caucasians. They were able to purchase things from stores, to go into restaurants. They were treated no differently than the Caucasians. But once Oklahoma became a state, then the racist Jim Crow laws began to take effect, and Black people at that time who had been free were now persecuted for doing what they were doing all along, just for being Black. Well, segregation and Jim Crow created this community, several hundred, around 100 communities of African American individuals, African American residents. Greenwood, however, was really one of the biggest. It was the biggest. It was like the diamond of all of those, and most of the communities were self-sufficient, self-sustaining. This one was the most self-sustaining. Greenwood was the most self-sufficient community, African American community. Nearly all of the dollars of that African Americans earned stayed in their community in Greenwood. And the reason I say that is that they had all of the professions that you could imagine. They had its own banks, their own stores, doctors, lawyers, dentists, electricians, plumbers, you name it, builders. Nearly every imaginable profession and craftsmen was available in Greenwood, and that outraged racist Caucasians. They couldn't stand it. Now, they didn't want African Americans using their facilities, their schools. They didn't want them in their stores, but the idea that African Americans were able to build their own self-sustaining community where they didn't need to be a part of the Caucasian experience, we'll put it that way, it just outraged them. How dare you have the sufficiency to live on your own without us? And because of that, they began to create scenarios to cause friction and issues in the African American community. One particularly is they would charge them with crimes they had not committed. Many of them were wrongfully accused of crimes. Well, May 31st through June 1st, 1921, this brutal attack took place because there was a wrongful charge of, how can I put it? They charged this man with sexually assaulting a Caucasian woman. And they were going to lynch him. A white mob or a Caucasian mob went to the courthouse. They wanted to take him out and beat him and then lynch and burn him. And the African American community said, no, we're not going to let you do that. And they went to the courthouse to break it up. Well, at that point, gunshots erupted, and from the white mob or the Caucasian mob. Thousands of angry Caucasians targeted the town and its citizens after they left the courthouse. There was a concentrated wave of violence that included murder, shootings, lootings of homes and businesses. Fires were set by torches, and even incendiary explosives were dropped from a small fleet of planes. They enacted war on a Black community that was doing nothing to deserve this. I don't know any community that would deserve this, but this community especially did not deserve this. The violence grew again, as I said, as this confrontation of this man who was wrongfully accused of assaulting a white or Caucasian woman. As a result, the town was obliterated. The only thing left in that town was one church, and it actually remains there today. The town had everything you could imagine. As I said, they had all of the medical, they had medical facilities there. They had their own newspaper. One man who owned a newspaper fled to the north when the massacre was going on. He and his family fled to the north. They were so angry that he got away. They found his brother, who was not even in that community. He lived in Tulsa, but not in that community. They found his brother, cut off his ear, and made him eat That's how sick and base these individuals were. And that's how sick and debased hate is, especially hate that is based on, well, I think all hate is baseless, but based on someone's race. They've done nothing to you. They've done nothing to you but merely exist. And because this community existed without the need of Caucasians, they were going to take it down. Now, hate can destroy buildings. Hate can destroy property. Hate can even kill some people. But what it can't do is kill or destroy our greatness. And when Maya Angelou says, "Still I rise," that poem really is based on, it's not based on Tulsa or Greenwood specifically, but it is based on the African American experience. And irrespective of what happens to us, we continue to rise. And I think in this case, why are we talking about this now? Because it's the 100th anniversary. In addition to discussing the fact that it is the 100th anniversary of the Greenwood Tulsa massacre, it is important for us to know that we can and we must rebuild our communities. And we have an opportunity, a unique opportunity in 2021. In 2021, we have a unique opportunity to rebuild our cities, especially here in Jefferson County and in Birmingham, in metropolitan Birmingham. The American Rescue Plan offers us just such an opportunity to rebuild our communities. We have the opportunity to do so by taking advantage of the fact that there is $1.9 trillion available for rebuilding communities. It's called the American Rescue Plan, signed by President Biden. It's established to rebuild the economy after the pandemic. But in that fund, there are earmarks that are specific to the African American community, specific, earmarked for African Americans and their communities, and Black faith-based nonprofits. Now, I haven't heard, other than Commissioner Sheila Tyson, I haven't heard a lot of our officials talking about this. A lot of the money comes through the state, through the counties, and then the organizations, whether there be schools, what have you, go to the state to get it. A lot of states have rejected it. They don't want it. But our officials have an obligation to inform us how to prepare the projects that are needed and to take advantage of these funds, because, and I think that they're obligated to accept the funds. A lot of states aren't accepting the funds. Again, hate runs deep. They'd rather, as my mother would say, cut off your nose to spite your face. They'd rather not have the money, because the way the money is structured, in the past, states could get money and decide how they wanted to distribute it. This time, there's specific earmarks for specific things. And if it's not used for that, then you can't use the money. So a lot of states have just said, screw it, we don't want it. We can't allow that to happen here in Jefferson County. So I'm going to encourage you, those of you who are listening to this podcast, I'm going to encourage you to find your officials, your state, your local, your county officials, and demand that they have roundtable discussions on what this money will be earmarked for, how your organizations, how the community, how the cities and the departments within those cities can take advantage of these funds. Sheila Tyson can't do it by herself. She has exposed a lot of this to us, those of us in leadership, and we're taking advantage of it for our particular areas. But there are too many. We can't do it all. We need everyone else in power to say, hey, this is what's going on. I'm going to give you, here's the information. Here's the key to how you do it. And then we need to get to work. This is not one of those things where you stand by and wait for a check. It's not the, what was the checks that people were getting? The stimulus checks. Yeah. I didn't get one. So that's why I had to think. The stimulus checks. This isn't a stimulus check. You have to do something for your organization to receive these funds. But it's incumbent upon us to do just that. Whatever it is that we need to do, put together our plan, outline it, put together our budget, come together, collaborate with other organizations that are doing just that. Maybe they do something a little different than what your organization is doing. And you put together a project that will be one that would help elevate the community. You have identifiable points where you measurable points to say this is how we measure our progress. This is how we measure the performance. And if you have measurable progress in that plan, there's no reason why you should not be, or your organization shouldn't be, one that would be able to receive funds. Again, this is a great opportunity for us to rebuild as we commemorate, as we and I don't want to say commemorate because I don't want to commemorate what happened. As we move forward from what happened in May 1921 to 2021, we want to remember Tulsa, remember Greenwood in a way that would rebuild not just Greenwood, not just Tulsa, but all of Black America, because we can do it. Greatness runs within us. There's no excuse for us not to be successful. Greatness runs in us. And so that's what I wanted to leave you with today. I said I would not do extremely long podcast until I can have someone in the studio with me to discuss various topics. But on this one, let's just remember Tulsa in a way that really elevates us by rising. And we can do that by doing something in our community, working in our community to strengthen it. And it doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, there are things that we can do. One thing we can do in particular is to work to make sure that the Black community gets its portion in Jefferson County, and I mean all of Jefferson County, the Birmingham side and the Bessemer Cutoff side, gets its portion of the American Rescue Plan so that our community can be self-sustaining. That's it for Taking It Black. I am your host, Attorney Valerie Hicks Hale, and it was wonderful being with you today. See you next week.